Hi from Toronto. My name is John Keogh, and welcome to the Future of Food 10 by 10 Expert Series. In this series, I'll speak with 10 experts for 10 minutes to get their views on the key challenges in the food industry and also the key opportunities. And today, I'm delighted to have with me my second guest from Australia, Margaret Balfour. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning, Toronto. Good morning, John.
Margaret, the 10 minutes goes very, very quickly. So, in the first 30 seconds to 1 minute, can you tell the viewers a little bit about who you are and the type of work that you do?
Hi, thanks, John. Yeah, look, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks for inviting me for the video. My qualifications obviously are in medical microbiology and postgrad law, specialising in torts and contracts. I've been in the food industry for over 30 years now. The team at Diligence, we have a broad variety of strengths as processing specialists, food technologists, microbiologists, and also senior technical management experience globally. Most of our team are GFSI auditors as well. Our business, I guess, exists to support the food and the allied industries with technical guidance, training, auditing against GFSI and retailer standards, development of standards for industry bodies, and auditor support through calibration workshops and training programs. I guess the key interest areas for me personally are around allergen management, food fraud, and food safety culture.
Wonderful. Now, Margaret, you've been around in the industry for about 30 years. What do you see as the key challenges that keep coming back that the industry has today?
I think there's some really fundamental challenges that businesses have always had and will always have. And the key ones in my mind are trying to bring new products to the market in a cost-effective manner quickly, obviously to increase market share. There's always competition for shelf space with the retailers, whether it be online, virtual, or a physical store. Obviously competition for consumers. And businesses are constantly trying to evolve and develop new products to meet these requirements. And at the same time, the business is trying to reduce their costs and overheads. So I think one of the key challenges really is trying to, at the moment, particularly finding new raw materials and the requisite detailed checks that are required. As a result, the number of products or SKUs that a facility manufactures on a production line or a processing facility have increased immensely in the last 10 to 20 years. If you consider, for example, the bread industry in the 1960s and the 70s, your options were white bread or brown bread, and that was it. And you consider what's available today. So the resulting outcome is a complexity of factors that influence the errors that can be made. And the types of things that we're seeing is multiple packaging types on production lines, multiple formulations, multiple ingredients, many changeovers in one shift, obviously more allergens, and you factor all that together, there's a lot more errors going to be made in the industry, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. So new product introductions, trying to be cost effective, the competition, the fight for consumers, reducing costs, and the complexities of finding raw materials and those new ingredients and changeovers in manufacturing. So quite a lot there to unpack. I will come back to that in a few moments. Now, taking all of those challenges together, what do you see as the key opportunities that the food industry must or should be working on right now?
I think the key thing in my mind is that businesses need to recognise this and understand the complexity, and they need to recognise it as one of their biggest challenges rather than just accepting it as the norm and moving on. And we know that the majority of undeclared allergen recalls are caused by wrong product, wrong pack, or vice versa, or caused by product and packaging errors on startup or changeover particularly. A significant proportion are also caused by unexpected allergens present in a finished product from the raw material. And when we recognise an issue, we can correct it, we can address it. And, some standards, for example, have modified in the past sort of 5 to 10 years to provide, I guess, a more prescriptive environment around the relevant controls. However, I don't necessarily believe industry as a whole has taken the opportunity to really work on those controls. I've dealt with a few clients in 2020, COVID challenges aside, that have got themselves in a really difficult position due to the purchase of raw materials that are used in an allergen-free product that did in fact contain the allergen. And, further assessment work that I've done with the clients on the specifications, the PIFs, and the other information provided by the supplier certainly rang some warning bells for me and required some serious investigation, in my professional opinion, prior to purchase and procurement, the client, as a result, they had a significant quantity of stock sitting in a warehouse that couldn't be sold. That's the recognition, had it occurred prior to the purchase, may have prevented that from happening.
That's again quite a lot to unpack there around, certainly around allergens and errors, shift changeovers, unexpected allergens, and so on. But I want to circle back now to the key challenges that you mentioned. And I want to hone in on sourcing new raw materials. I know that in the UK, there was a research recently that said that because of the price pressure from retailers, that manufacturers were sourcing from alternate sources. And 32% of them couldn't guarantee the authenticity of the ingredients that they were sourcing. Do you see problems in that area?
Oh, it's a huge problem. And as I said, COVID aside, it's not just the retailers, it's the consumers, pushing the retailers for price, and the retailers, fighting for, market share. And therefore that puts the food manufacturers in a position to fight for market share and try and reduce their costs and overheads. Particularly in the current global trading climate, finding new suppliers is becoming increasingly common. So the amount of activity around supplier approvals, procurement of new raw materials is becoming increasingly common as the industry, I guess, tries to navigate things like shipment delays, businesses pivoting to alternative ingredients or develop alternative products. We know there are new markets that are growing very rapidly in certain sectors like meat-free, dairy-free, vegan products, plant-based products. I guess my experience is, while many businesses do the standard requisite checks, for example, get the supplier to fill out a questionnaire, do they have some sort of certification, GFSI or otherwise, getting copies of specifications, PIFs, C of A's, etc., etc. Many businesses just seem to go through the motion. It's just like ticking the boxes to go through this exercise and satisfy a procedure. In some cases, and more than I'd like, not enough detailed effort or investigation really has been put into questioning the information that's been supplied by the supplier. For example, is the certificate valid? Is it current? Does the scope of the certificate cover the product we plan to procure from this business? Is the site or the location the correct location where our product is coming from? Go through the specification and PIF in detail. If something doesn't look right in that spec or PIF, something's missing or doesn't correlate, you should question it. You really need to follow it up until you get an answer, and be a bit of a hound dog, if you like. If the information that's presented to you by the supplier doesn't correlate entirely, or something's missing, or it hasn't been supplied, talk to your supplier. In some cases, it becomes really apparent when you do that the supplier themselves, they don't know, they don't understand. And of course, if they don't know or understand, they're probably not controlling the risk as well as you would like them to. That, of course, that information that you gather through that conversation with your supplier, that needs to be factored into your risk assessment for that ingredient or supplier before the procurement decision is made. And fundamentally, I guess the most important thing is that the person that's doing the checks and reading these documents and reviewing it and talking to the supplier, they have enough knowledge about the topic and the product and the supplier to identify when something isn't right. And of course, that takes a lot of experience and training.
Gotcha. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that. We won't go back to that, but I want to take something that you mentioned around, I think, checkers checking boxes. And I think there's this notion of a heavier focus on compliance rather than the old-fashioned quality control. So when you look at the opportunities, especially around allergens, what do you think should be a best practice? And do you think the role of analytical science and testing needs to be ramped up somewhat?
Look, I think there definitely is a role to play in there. I guess history shows us that, technological advances in terms of testing raw materials or analysis in general is important. It's one of the components. But, some of the examples that I've seen, at least so far, just in 2020, you needn't have tested the product to identify that there was a problem there, So I think getting back to basics, but for the right reasons, and rather than just going through the motions, really do analyse and question the information that you're provided by your supplier, rather than just taking it on face value, or having somebody who really does understand the risk associated with that particular raw material do that assessment for you. If that means you know you need to outsource it, then so be it. We outsource analytical testing most of the time, and the interpretation of those results is really important as well. But you know, I think testing, yes, John, has a role, but it's only a proportion of that role. The basics of the paperwork, you know, you can pick up a lot of stuff there if you really look at it properly and you know what to look for.
Absolutely. I think very important points. Now, before I get to my very last question, I do want to ask you, how can companies get in touch with you?
Oh, okay. Look, basically, most people either send a query through my website, which is www.yourdiligence.com.au, or they will email me directly. My email is diligence@aapt.net.au. And of course, as you well know, I'm quite active on LinkedIn as well. So my profile on LinkedIn, people are quite welcome to connect with me and shoot me through questions through the message function in LinkedIn.
Wonderful. I'll certainly put in your contact details in the video. Now, the final question, we've gone over by a minute or so, but my final question for you. If I put you up in front of 50 startup CEOs in the food industry in 1 minute or so, what guidance would you give them?
I guess I'd emphasise to them that, you know, that your staff are your biggest asset. You know, you need to skill them up, develop them so that they become the first line of defence for your business. And I'm not talking about food defence. That's part of it, of course, but that approach is true, you know, for all aspects of your operation, whether it be new suppliers, ingredient assessment, site security, food fraud, general food safety, and even OH&S. Developing a really good food safety culture, not just to meet a standard requirement, but know that having a supportive and a learning environment in your business will help you immensely, both in the short and longer term.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. There you have it, all the way from Australia, the expert in many aspects of food safety and managing food supply chains, Margaret Balfour. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, John. Have a great day.
Thank you.